Welcome to the Book Flood Podcast. I am your host, Tom Nixon. My guest this week is Nick Glass. Nick is a nationally known educational partner focused on improving literacy opportunities for all students. Equity work is how he defines his professional charge. He has a master's in educational policy and the history of multicultural education from the University of Wisconsin Madison and runs teachingbooks.net, a literacy service he created to empower every reader with meaningful connections to whatever books they are reading. One other curious note about Nick: he is one of the few children's book experts who has worked in Major League Baseball. He was the statistician for the San Francisco Giants in the late 1980s to early 1990s. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Tom. Great to join you. Congrats on all Book Flood is doing.
Thank you so much. I had to add the part about the Giants. That was always something
There
new.
goes your Los Angeles audience right now. They're just shut off immediately.
Little bit probably, but Uh, so, why don't we start with you giving us an idea of your career trajectory? How did you get here?
Circuitously. There's no one path. I'm one of those liberal arts people that started college thinking I was going to be pre-med and math major, became an art major, moved into Major League Baseball from there, of course, and then into I guess I did some work. I became an EMT and did research on pre-hospital medicine for a bit, and then joined the world of education. My educational connections began because I was thinking I wanted to find a way to make a difference, and I thought everybody relates to what school is, some form of learning institution or process. There's always a learning process, and I thought, wouldn't it be fantastic to study? And I narrowed it down to the history of schooling in America, and specifically around the education of different cultures. And I studied that, became all but dissertated in that space, finished writing, spent about a year or two writing my dissertation. And then because I've never worked in a school, you'll appreciate this, because I'd never worked in a school, I thought that I could study and look at change. I thought change happens over a 15 or 20-year period. But my findings, when I looked at Madison, Wisconsin, and how it went from all white to surpassing the national average of African Americans in the classroom over a period of time, there was no change really in the curriculum. And I was like, I really wanted to look at the founding of multicultural education. What did it look like? And we'll learn from that today. Well, because I hadn't worked in a school, I didn't know that change is so slow and
So
so incremental
incremental.
that I just said, this isn't for me. I need something that's going to make a difference for equity. And when I was doing my dissertation, I was working in a kids-only bookstore called Pooh Corner.
Hmm.
And in the 70s, there were a handful of fabulous children's only bookstores. There's one in San Jose. There was one in San Francisco. There were a few in LA. And Pooh Corner was one. And I got very active with the store, hosted hundreds of author events. And I thought, can't I use this World Wide Web as an equity tool so that everybody could have an author there when reading a book? I already knew the authors. I already knew the publishing world to a degree. And I thought, let me break down those barriers and be a liaison for the world to have access to that. And then my state of Wisconsin thought it was a nice idea, and they licensed it for everybody, and bit by bit. And now we're in about 60,000 schools and libraries, distributing over 100 million connections a year last year, and joined Overdrive to do some other fabulous things. So the trajectory is follow my quest of how to make a difference. I went into baseball because I thought the world could change if baseball stood for great things. I went into pre-hospital medicine thinking we can help people that way. And then I went into education thinking that I'm still in education. I view teaching books as educational policy work. We're breaking down barriers so that every single reader can feel a connection the moment they're reading a book. So that's how I got here.
So, how did teaching books come into being? You've given us a little bit there.
Well, I was not happy with the findings of my dissertation. It was just so frustrating to be talking to people that were talking about their hope and their wonder of what they were doing in the late 70s, early 80s, here's what we thought we could do to boost the African American educational experience within Madison. And then bit by bit, as I began looking at what they said and the results and the curriculum, there was no connection. It was just like, oy. And so I teaching books came about because in part I was frustrated with my dissertation. I wasn't happy. I was also very happy with my younger daughter. My first child was born and loved children's books and was reading to her and getting involved in the store and hosting hundreds of events and realizing that it could make a real difference. There was kind of an epiphany moment of Madison's about 2-3 hours, depending on traffic, from Chicago. So I'd always piggyback with some of the stores in Chicago, Women's and Children's First, or a store in Milwaukee, and we'd share author events. So there was an author coming from Chicago one day, a very big time author. I had sold 500 of her books before she got there.
Wow.
And a school asked if she could stop on the way. And this is in 1997, 98 maybe. And I called the school, I called the author and said, the school says, can you stop by on the way? Would you be interested in a side gig? And she goes, yeah, for $6,000, I'll do 45 minutes. It'll be probably between 4 and 5 in the afternoon. So I figured, well, there goes that. So I called back this public school and they said, yeah, we'll do that. And I think I was devastated. I was like, wait, you're spending this much money outside of school time for whoever can come to meet this author. Why can't we use this thing that's now a few years old called the World Wide Web? Why can't I go into this author's home and figure out how to film her and put her on the web so that everybody can have her there the moment they want they're reading the book? So there was a huge discrepancy going on. So that was in my brain. And then also at the same time, my grandparents died and they left my daughter money to go to college, just a little bit of money. And I said, well, she's just an infant. Why don't I take that money and start teaching books? And so my wife had me go to business classes. I know nothing about business. And so I got a grant from the state to learn how to run a business and build a business model. And she had a real job. She's an OBGYN. She's a nurse practitioner. She's amazing. And she was totally supportive of me. And teaching books was born out of the idea of, let's let everybody meet an author and let's take that college fund and invest it in something else. And also because she had a real job, I was able to have the freedom to try to start something new. And I loved just being out in the world, working with educators, learning their challenges, figuring out how, if you're going to be an equity tool, what are those issues that we need to break down, and haven't stopped since. And just so you know, that daughter and my other one have now been through college. My grandfather can
So you did work
rest
out
in
the money
peace.
thing.
She earned a fine opportunity to go to college, yes, on her own right, and we helped some too, yes.
Teaching books is available in my home state of California, all schools, all libraries. It's a lovely thing from the California State Library. Are there others who offer the same, or is this part of a future plan?
No, so it started with Wisconsin in 2005. They had just launched this idea called BadgerLink, which is resources for everybody equitably. And pretty much every state has that. California's didn't start till 2018, and Teaching Books is their literacy resource that the state library brought in, along with Britannica and ProQuest and some Gale resources now, and even a early childhood tool, wonderful piece from Capstone, all freely available to everybody in the state of California. And but Teaching Books is in 13 states like that. Our newest one is just going live is Kentucky. And the idea is that it's an equity tool. It's an equity literacy tool. It's also professional development. For those that don't know Teaching Books, it's a few things. It's a library of resources about books. So like you can have the author there talking about why they wrote a book, but there's also book trailers, discussion questions, activity guides, games, book trailers, everything but the book, vocabulary lists, vocabulary materials, everything to teach to bring a book to life without the book. And it's also got these professional development tools, such as a diverse books toolkit, a collection analysis tools. It's got early childhood toolkit. It's got all kinds of things that we've been developing to make sure, because when you're trying to reach everybody has a different need. The student has a need depending on their grade. The parent has a need. The teacher has a need. The curriculum director has a need. The school library has a need. The preschool and the after school program have different needs. The public libraries, staff and patrons and front end staff and backroom staff, the academic groups, the faculty, staff, and students all have different needs. And we're trying to reach everybody. And teaching books is an equity tool. It's trying to say we all count. Everybody's equitably treated in this process. Then you have to really think that through very carefully. And I think we've done with the amazing people that have contributed to teaching books for now almost 25 years. We just started our 25th year, Tom.
Oh, wow.
I'm really proud of how we try to serve everybody.
Well, I've mentioned in so many different places that for me, teaching books is one of the best resources
Thank
for
you.
reading specialists, for elementary school teachers, for special education teachers, and it just goes on because
Thank you. It's a blessing to do
it,
this work.
it,
And
yeah,
it's the sum of listening to all the great things that educators share about what their struggles are, what they're wishing to do. And then the know-how of our amazing programmer has been with me 20 some odd years. And, I've had colleagues that have been with me a long, long time. And even those that aren't here, we still are building on their amazing foundational work. It's a library about the world of children's young adult books without the books. It's everything else. And that's what we should probably get to later. That's why we joined Overdrive, which we'll cover when you want to. But it's really a beautiful thing.
so, and here we are at Overdrive. So, Teaching Books was recently purchased by Overdrive, the digital books company. What are your hopes for this acquisition?
Well, as I said, teaching books is everything but the book, right? And
Right?
we're distributing all these resources to people trying to say, bring to life whatever book you're using. And while teaching books doesn't care whether it's um, sorry about that. Let me turn that off. While teaching books is what I call format agnostic, we don't um, worry if you're using the braille or the audio or the mass market paperback or the library binding or the ebook or the audiobook. We're trying to just support whatever someone's reading and change the relationship to that text. But I thought it'd be incredible for the next phase of teaching books to partner with the world's best distributor of digital books. Overdrive is, bar none in my eyes, exceptional with Libby, with Sora for the schools, with Marketplace, and they also have Canopy, which has a lot of potential book connections as well. Canopy is video streaming in the public libraries, and I thought this would be the perfect next phase for me and for this product to live on in a way where it's going to put book and resources together. My former colleague used to say that it's like Reese's peanut butter cups. There's one's peanut butter, one's chocolate, and together we're going to make something totally different. And that's what we're doing. And it's incredibly. We're just getting to that now. And coming soon will be teaching books as a discovery tool. It will read what your collection of digital books are. It will show you what you don't have. It will build you carts and lists and let you check out books for your students. And it's just so exciting to begin to imagine where we're going. And we're just beginning of what we can do to create an experience for readers in Libby, in Sora, where they can really not just enjoy the book, but have data and content about the book that they never could have had if it hadn't been for that merging of teaching books and Overdrive together. So Steve Potash has built an amazing team over his years. I am just inspired by him. It's so fun to work for people that are so inspiring, trying to enlighten reading, and I'm having a great time. Acquisition sometimes comes with this dirty sentiment of, you lose control of what you're doing. And what I
Mm.
say is what's happened is that we're building something together that's really, really exciting. The team at Overdrive has been tremendously supportive. It's change, of course. It's different than what we did as a feisty little band of independent people building teaching books in our nitty gritty little way. And now we're part of a bigger organization, but that organization cares a great deal. And I really am excited to see where I'll go over the next few years. We're 3 years in and just really getting going now on the integration work, and the idea of book and resource together like never presented before, and all the information around it is just supremely exciting. And I'm still almost every day excited to get to work. Not quite every day, to be honest, but
If
it's
it's
pretty
almost
much every
every
day.
day, that's better than most.
Yeah, I feel very, very, very lucky. And those other days are just because, it's cold. I want to stay in bed.
No, I understand. I have watched Overdrive over the years, and they've acquired things, but they have carefully acquired things. In a sense,
Yeah.
it's does this build our brand, but also does this make what we do so much better than it was before? And for me,
Yeah.
the purchase of teaching books couldn't have been a better idea.
I feel so lucky that Steve reached out. He had this vision. And now we get to integrate curriculum connections and reading connections, but it's also public library tools and new ways to look at the information. We all get kind of stagnant in our own way when we do it ourselves. And then to suddenly have colleagues that think the same types of issues. How do we best help integrate our resources into the technologies that a
Hmm.
school or library have? We're not the only ones figuring that out, but together we're so much wiser, and there's so many experts and professionals there, and teaching books has amazing staff. Oh my god, I've got the best. I hired incredible people over the years, and they've all stayed with me since the acquisition, and I'm really grateful to them. They take on these challenges, and they're such great carers and representatives of readers when they work with schools and libraries and everybody. So teaching books
Does
has
your
done some
does,
amazing things.
sorry does your staff are they all in one place, or are they all across the country?
Where when I was running teaching books, I became a virtual company in 2014. So a little before the pandemic, we began doing that, and started hiring people from all over. When I put out a posting, it was national searching for the most amazing library staff. We've got dozen, no, I don't know how many right now. Probably on the teaching books team alone, probably like 15 or so librarians, and which is a huge percentage of us. And now we pretty much we, everyone stayed where they were because of the acquisition. We really wanted to honor and keep our team together. That happened with Canopy when they joined Overdrive as well. But Overdrive hires primarily into the Cleveland offices. We're based in Cleveland, Ohio, and the job postings are pretty much all, unless there's a very specific need. It's really wonderful to build the culture in the community of the office space.
Hmm.
They do a hybrid workspace right now that seems to be working well, but I don't know. I'm not part of that. I'm in Northern California, and but we have colleagues in teaching books as people in I think 13 or 14 states. Um, so we're quite a remote group still, the teaching books team, but we're all Overdrive colleagues working in different departments now. So we're all supporting multiple areas. I'm in the content area. We build educational content, and but we also have people in partner services and support team and tech teams and so forth like that.
What advice do you have for schools and districts that want to jump into teaching books, that want to have a digital library?
Hmm. There's kind of two sides to that. For those that want a digital library, which I think is really important, um, I'd start asking yourself why, what you're trying to accomplish. Um, for me, the way I think about it is that our kids are already learning to be incredible digital readers, and they're building different kinds of strategies than at least I grew up with reading print and paper. And so, what does that mean? How are we preparing our kids, for example, to be tested and apply for jobs and whatever it is in the future? That's all about imagining entrepreneurial opportunities all through these digital lenses. And so I think those are not necessarily things we've always thought about when we're thinking about how do we want to get our kids to be literate and successful. So a digital collection is slightly different than just saying how do we want to support and encourage reading. Uh, so for me, one of the most amazing things I think about with what Overdrive offers is like unlimited get a magazine subscription. You get 300 some odd magazines at once, and they're all age appropriate. So if you're in elementary school, you get those, and they're back issues and forward issues, and kids get really good at reading short pieces in their entirety, following their interests. I want knitting, I want cars, I want Minecraft, I want baseball, and they all have something there. And there's also unlimited access for comics and graphic books, and again, everything age appropriate because that's so important in this day and age. So to me, thinking about what it is you're after as you're trying to develop your digital literate community. For me personally, and from the teaching book side, it's not just about digital reading, as you asked, Tom, but it's also about reading in general. And what I always want is people to feel connected to the book of whatever it is they're reading. And specifically, teaching books is about children's and young adult books. We don't have materials for those magazines that I just described, or for manga, or for these tremendously devoured things between Minecraft and manga. That's a lot of great reading that's going on that teaching books doesn't support. We're about literary fiction and nonfiction books and bringing those to life with connections. But for me, I want people to feel successful, thoughtful, curious. I like Harry Potter because I like books about schools. I love, Lord of the Rings because I love the Middle Ages. Or maybe I just love bows and arrows, or I love elves. And then whatever it is they're interested in, they can find other books and then find resources to bring those to life. So it's a massive reader's discovery portal. And I personally am after readers that feel empowered to read successfully, that readers can feel build that habit of reading. To me, it's about reading habit. We talk about joy of reading, which is probably the ultimate. That's the North Star. But to get to joy, you also have to have successful habit. You have to have success, and you have to build habit. And then I think you can get the joy within that as well, because it's so personal and feels so good. So things that teaching books has done to perpetuate those levels of things, like right now, there's a whole movement in science of reading. And a lot of people don't quite know it that we all have different definitions of the word. Let me put it that way. I don't want to say we don't know what it means, but there's different definitions of where we want to say this is science of reading. For me, it's about thinking there's this wonderful model called the Scarborough reading rope. And what it talks about is the reading skills and the comprehension level. And so you have the things like phonemic awareness, that's one piece, and decoding, that's another piece, and vocabulary, that's another piece. And so is knowledge involved in the reading, that's another piece. So you have to think holistically. And so one of the things that I've been worried about is, and when talking to our school partners, is that they're very focused right now on decoding and focused on phonemic awareness. But what about wonderful picture books with familiarity and great rhythm and knowledge and familiar language and vocabulary opportunities that are more than just in some of the high quality instructional material adopted text that they're getting to teach decoding. So our team actually went about and we classified known and favorite picture books by each phonemic, by each sound, by each element, by each digraph, each blend, each vowel sound. So if you were looking for animal books that are also the SH blend, then we would show you all these books that have that. And then we created instructional materials to go there. We created routines that remind you to think in terms, go above and beyond just the phonemic awareness, but also including clap it out, tap it out, say it, write it. What's the vocabulary? What are similar words, different words? Like, we've developed all these incredible pieces through my amazing colleagues, developed these pieces to really support the inclusion of the beautiful books, the books that create the habit, that work our way towards joy of reading, while also fleshing out that reading rope to ensure we've got comprehension and reading awareness and skills at the same time. So really great stuff. I'm very proud of it. And but I think that the answer to your question is, my advice is ask, what are you trying to do? And then see how where you're going to get that. And sometimes it's just getting a curriculum, but some of these supplemental things like teaching books, I think, can make a huge difference as well.
Agreed. How is teaching books helping schools and libraries fight back against book bans? That is something that is on everybody's minds right now.
Yeah. So teaching books is information about books. And let me go back and say, going back to my journey to get to teaching books, I'm a data nerd. I love information. I've taken great pride in the information that teaching books has for every book. We've tracked forever all of the state lists, and we track 150 national book awards, about 600 provincial and state lists. We have all the reviews from 8 journal sources. We have all this information. We also do our own classifications on diversity, grade level, curricular area, genre. We don't use publisher data. We have our own original classifications because we want to really help people be where they're at and not necessarily just reiterate the publisher's statements of things. So we've gone out of our way to create this amazing data stream. So a few years ago, when this began to become ever present in my eyes, that the stress was out there, with the support of my boss, Steve Potash, and the Overdrive team, we asked if we could build something called book resumes. And what the resume is it's the professional credentialed information in one consistent format immediately available. So you can look up any book on teaching books. And if you're an adult, we don't give this to students. We don't give this to families. You have to be a certified professional in your library or school. You fill out your profile. Then you have access to everything on teaching books, including book resumes, because this is a professional tool. And then when you look up any book, it will then give you a summary of, for example, we read through all the reviews, and if School Library Journal said this book is for grades 7 through 12, and Book List said this is for grades 9 through 12, and Kirkus said this is grades 5 through 12, you see all that immediately. You don't have to go opening every review. At a glance, you very quickly see all the information, but then you also get the full reviews, not an abridged version. You get the reviews, you get the awards, you get the BISAC and Library of Congress subject headings, you get every award and state and provincial list it's been on. Because every day we interview authors, we ask authors every day why they wrote those books. So if we've already interviewed that author, you get that as a primary source statement about why this author wrote that particular text. And then you get the audio samples and the ebook samples, and you get a full report, or you can get a one-page summary that you can give to anybody, and then it has a QR code that takes anybody right to that. So the answer to your question about what are we doing in response to the book challenges that's happening is, my fantasy is that we can help change the narrative from being reactive. Right now, everybody it's a very reactive thing. Tom, why do you have this book? And now you're going to be put in defensive mode, and you're going to start feeling you might not even know where to turn, or maybe you haven't been trained in all this. Who knows what? Who's going to a front end library staff? That might not be their thing. So what we've been trying to do is build a tool that all they do is they look up the book and say, here's the documentation about that book, or here's what we're reading in our 5th grade classroom this year. Here are the book resumes. If you have any questions or you need any accommodations, please let us know. But now who's controlling the narrative? Right? So we are. And so we're able to empower library staff, professional staff, education staff to have information at their fingertips that's consistent and instantaneous. So those are huge. It's thorough, consistent, and instantaneous. So it's got all the reviews. It's got 8 sources. That's School Library Journal, Kirkus, Book List, PW, Publishers Weekly, a bunch of others, Cooperative Children's Book Center, AudioFile, all these in one spot. And so then you have all of that just at a click of a button away, and then you can use our sharing tools to print it or share it. So we've actually very proactively built it, but we built it for the reason of, 1, supporting everybody who's feeling stress, but 2, with this fantasy that we can begin to make analysis of what you're putting in front of our kids routine. You can look at it with your professional eyes through different set of information that you're used to, and also be able to change the narrative from reactive to proactive. So we're doing it for all of those reasons. And it's come about because of the opportunities that we have of listening and being in the room with these incredible leaders. Like we've gotten to see each other at the California School Library Association over the years, and there's nothing better than being there with all of these. You know how few librarians there are in the state of California, and they're all
Right.
mighty band, fighting together, working together. And when things happen in Fresno or Huntington or wherever it is, we're all there to listen and learn and support each other through that. And this is my response and Overdrive's response and Teaching Books' response to this book challenging. And the one final thing I would say about that is that we also decided, because we have such good information, that we're donating our data to Unite Against Book Bans, which is part of the Office
Oh,
of Intellectual Freedom. The American Library Association has an Office of Intellectual Freedom, and within that, they are trying to have book resumes for the most banned and challenged titles in the country. And so we just finished building a connection behind the scenes where they get our data, they can type in the books they need, and boop, they get all the information to format as they wish. That's not done yet, but that's coming. And I know that School Library Journal is providing some reviews for them as is Book List. So between the Teaching Books / Overdrive and media source, which is School Library Journal, Library Journal, and remember ALA has a product called Book List.
mhm.
That between them all, the Unite Against Book Ban book resumes are going to be fleshed out to be really good. But Teaching Books will have them for every book, and that's the difference. It doesn't have to be one that has been challenged 5 times. Instead, it's what book you need. You can get a list of all the books in your curriculum, hit a button, and you get all the book resumes like that. And they're already built for you. They have all the information you need. They're already formatted right. You just have to open the link and hit print or
Well,
share.
and as I have said more than once, yes, there are lists of banned books, but in my time when I was leading the libraries in Fresno Unified, we had issues with some of those, but also, a book would just come out of the blue that you have no idea why this is an issue, and yet
So
it
I didn't
is.
want people to feel stopped. I don't want a professional teacher, a professional library staff, a professional anybody to feel like their life stops because someone just asked the question, why do you have this book? Now they might be saying it in a slightly different way, like, get rid of this book, please. But it's the same question. And if we can just calmly say, "Oh, let me give you the book resume for that title," and if you have questions about that, that's got all the credentialed information. Now they might not like our sources, but we're literacy professionals, and we know what information literacy looks like. We know what our sources are and what's not. And so this is a summary of the most credentialed professional information in our field in one spot that's meant to be distributed and shared for a single title or for any collection of books.
So, is there a book or a series of books from your childhood that still resonates with you?
Um, it's funny. So Teaching Books has a collection analysis tool where you can scan the ISBNs or put in the books that you want to get a collection of. What did I read? How diverse were they? What were the genres? What are the age ranges? What are the recencies? So when I do that for my bookshelf, I'm really quite um, disheartened by the exposure I received to different cultures, to different experiences, to the
Right.
journeys I had. Um, One of my favorite books as a kid was Harriet the Spy. And when my younger daughter was born, I was so excited when she got older. We were reading it to her. And it was one of the most disgusting books to read aloud. I ultimately didn't finish it. I've never read it again because of the way it describes people as she's writing about the people she sees and the names she calls the people that are larger bodied or from different cultures or have different types of appearances. And she was just pretty offensive to me. So that's not one. But it had a big impact because I got to read it again as an adult. I'm actually rereading a lot of the books that I did appreciate when I was younger. I grew up in New York City. Cricket in Times Square was always one of my favorite books of all
Mhm.
time. I loved the subways. I loved then the rats now have taken over, but there were mice and other creatures and crickets there too, and cats and everything else. I'm proud of I remember the first book I ever read was a Roald Dahl book called Danny the Champion of the World. And I read that independently within a day. And I was so proud telling my mom, and she was very proud of me and ultimately bought me the book, and I, still have that. Um, those weren't series, but those were single titles. I think
Sure.
series is really becoming a thing of the day. Harry Potter, I think, really changed a lot of that, and many other, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Once you get going, my kids love Junie B. Jones and everything else. But no, I think there's some of those single things like learning about Roald Dahl a lot. I love Roald Dahl talking about he always wants to put the kid in the worst possible space at the beginning of a book, and that's the ugliest, worst moment. And when you think about all of his books, the kid's got
Right.
to transform and change in some manner. Something's awful at that moment. Um, I love those way to learn about how authors think and do that. But those are kind of the books. Nothing. As I've served on dozens of committees, of book committees and juries, and it's always fun to see how other people think and read and be a part of that experience as well. But for my childhood, I'd say nothing. My Tolstoy is my favorite writer in college, and I named
Mm.
my daughter after his daughter. But they're not the most impactful things. Are the things I've been reading in the past, as an adult,
Mm.
looking back on the kids' books. So yeah,
What are you reading now?
less. I don't read it. I don't have as much time as I wish to read. I just started last night a new series called Westfallen, and it's written by, um, if you know, Sister of the Traveling Pants, Anne Brashares, and her brother Ben, and it's a time travel historical fiction.
Oh,
Kid,
interesting.
kids find a radio in their backyard and start communicating with people during Nazi Germany, World War II time, and they change the course of history from this conversation, not in good ways necessarily, from what I understand. And I'm caught up in it already. And I assume it's the start of a series. I kind of remember
Mm.
when Hunger Games came out, I was on the Newbery committee that year. And I remember just reading it and saying, well, we're waiting for the next book now. Like it just changes. This is feeling like one of those, this is going to be a series, but it's the first of a book and it didn't come out all at once. It's not like Netflix where you get all of the whole thing at once. It's one book at a time, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm enjoying it, I also like that the kids all they were friends, but they're not friends anymore. And then they come back together around this because they grew apart. They were young kids together, all in the same neighborhood. They lived next to each other, but then they all go different ways. But then they come back together with this instance, and I always love community building and the resurfacing of people feeling good. So that's what I'm reading right now. I also, as an adult book, I'm very interested in Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point, and I have on
Right.
hold to get The Revenge of the Tipping Point, but I haven't gotten it yet. But I'm looking forward to seeing what that means. I don't actually know what Revenge of the Tipping Point means, but Malcolm Gladwell intrigues me. But mostly, I only read kids' books. The best book I've read, the book that had the greatest impact to me in the past year, was probably um, the what's it called? Dave Edgar's book, the uh, the Eyes of the Impossible,
Yeah.
and that was amazing. That was almost a perfect book. And as someone who's served on the Newbery and other committees, I feel that when you when you can build a consensus around a book, which this book did to get the gold seal as the most distinguished book in American literature from the Newbery Committee, from the ALA, I think it really is perfect, and it's one of the best books I've read in a long time, uh, because for so many reasons. I mean, the writing was exceptional. The production of the book, which Dave Eggers did through his own company, was really beautiful. Um, and I just found the story to just magnificently take me and readers places. I've read it and I've also listened to it now, and it's really quite perfect.
I want to thank you for being on the podcast.
Of course.
And for those of you listening, please like, subscribe, and share wherever you are listening. And again, thanks, Nick. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Tom. Pleasure to be a part of this, and thanks for finding ways to keep connecting all of us in this great space together. And a pleasure to always see you. So appreciate it.